Good evening, Doan community. I wish so badly that I could have joined you in the audience today, but instead I've been given this wonderful opportunity to welcome you to this space for growth and to provide a soft opening for what is to come. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Aspen Green-Cone. I'm a part of the class of 2018, a Phi Sigma Tau alumni, a journalism major, now creative director, and a forever advocate for equality and social justice. During my time at Doan, I had the honor of meeting Reverend Dr. Robert Polk, and to say his legacy moved me is an understatement. I was fortunate enough to be in attendance at this lectureship's first event, where we dove into Dr. Polk's experience as the university's first Black graduate, the good, the bad, and the lessons that he has shared with the world since. It's not often you come across people like that, whose journeys hit your core, where you leave the room feeling empowered to do more and to be more to create a better world. And it's during such moments when we confront the firsts and the onlys that this reality hits us. What may seem like a distant past is merely just a generation or two away. The need to be actively engaged with issues shaping our world is just as relevant and important now as it was during the first lectureship and the many, many years before that. Each of us holds the power to ignite change within our communities. My greatest hope for you all in attendance this evening is that you embrace this opportunity to learn, to question, and to stand together in the pursuit of justice and equality. Do not let these conversations fizzle out here. Together, we can make a difference. So without further ado, please enjoy this video my team and I put together featuring Reverend Dr. Polk and the impact of his lectureship series. Thank you.
My mother and father came to Chicago during the Great Migration. It was at a time when very few jobs were given to Black people. We were a poor family, dirt poor. Sometimes we went to bed hungry.
He was not accepted the first time that he applied at Doan. Bob took that rejection letter in Chicago, started all those contacts that he is so great at building bridges.
Our hearts dropped. They denied us admission to Doan College because we were Black. And the dean of students at that time said, you cannot come because we couldn't find any white students that wanted to live a room with Black students.
2 months later, got a welcoming letter with the names and addresses of their new roommates. And that new roommate was Donald Goodrich, my father.
Imagine the courage that that took to still come to a place that said, you do not belong here, and still come here and graduate as the first Black student at Doan.
When I speak about tight little island where we lived, where all the Blacks lived, it was a place where we could live and move and have our way of life without being put aside by white people. And yet everything that was important in that town, that community, was owned by white people.
I don't think our country does enough to set up opportunities for questioning your own values. But being able to step back and say, you know what, maybe the way I view the world isn't exactly how the world really is.
I really believe the lectureship became to be because Dr. Polk was relentless. America and Doan and surrounding places continue to be fractured, fragmented, and frail. And if we don't create a space where we can have braver conversations, it's not going to make a difference.
It allows conversations to start. And I think that any change making in this world starts with conversations. It starts when people come together, and also gives an opportunity to think and self-reflect about where am I in this journey to becoming an inclusive leader. And that's exactly what the Polk Lectureship does.
There was always some conversation at our table about race relations, changing, helping churches in suburbia and downtown Chicago change its standards about race.
The lectureship is an invitation to think more critically. We don't want a student to go away saying, I was never aware of any racial tension.
Here is the microcosm that provides a platform to explore with different ideas, different concepts, with people from different upbringings and experiences and worldviews. And if you're able to do that here and engage with differences in a productive manner, not only are you going to be a better leader, you're also going to be part of keeping the peace in this world.
It gives people a different perspective, and it lets people walk in other people's shoes when they've never had that time before. And all of a sudden you're sitting there going, wow, I never had to worry about walking down the street at 9 o'clock and being pulled over by the cops because I was in a good neighborhood and my skin color was a different color than white. And knowing what some people have had to endure makes me much more open and makes our students more open to maybe they're reacting this way for a reason.
That deconstructs some of the stereotypical images that they have about folks who look like me, that they see beyond the melanin, but they see the intellect. And then they begin to, in their mind, formulate their own action plan, recognizing that it is doable, trying to center themselves as future change agents and not to run from the truth.
You know, all they needed was the exposure, that I was the first black student to graduate from Doane.
And for students to realize he was first. And so how can I live up to that legacy, knowing that my being admitted here looked totally different from his, but I am here, and how am I going to make the most of it as he did?
We felt a bit out of place because we had bad experiences with white people. You know, it wasn't long before they accepted us and we accepted them. The world, in a sense, opened up to us. That's my story.
The 10th Annual Polk Lectureship. My name is Meridian Lehman, and I am a second-year student from Colorado studying business administration. I am honored and privileged to welcome Dr. Carla Cooper, Doane University's Professor of Practice, who will introduce this year's guest lecturer.
You go back with me to 1973 and wander in the imagination of her father, Bishop John R. Bryant, and the late, great Reverend Mother, Dr. Cecilia Williams Bryant, who perhaps knew their baby girl would rule not only their hearts, but find her way to heal hearts in a homecoming, welcoming presence as a Thema. There's something about a name. The name Thema is a Khan or Ghanaian in origin, and it means queen. In a Khan culture, the name Thema holds a position of utmost honor and respect, historically used to address powerful female leaders who govern their kingdoms with wisdom and grace. Indeed, this is Dr. Thema in her living her name as a legacy. I could tell you about her accolades and accomplishments as an academician, as a psychologist, as a dancer, as a mother of two, as a theologian, and as an ordained itinerant elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, as a third-generation AME, granddaughter and daughter of two distinguished bishops, and granddaughter and daughter of strong women leaders. A prolific writer, here are her 2 books, don't forget to buy them. A studier of the mind, giving care to the healing of the heart. Dr. Thema Simone Bryant is a gift to humankind. And in this 10th year of celebrating the living legend of the Reverend Dr. Robert L. Polk, for such a time as this in which we are living, who better to help us get our hearts and our minds regulated for the facing of these uncertain days than that of having a doctor in the house who can help center ourselves to become well. The Queen, the Reverend Dr. Thema Bryant. The heart is a house of love, so open up your heart and ears to hear. And I promise you, you will be stretched, but not be broken. Transformed, but not trampled. Empowered, but not left out. Free, liberated to heal yourself and this land. So I present to you our 10th Polk lecturer, the Queen, Dr. Thema Bryant.
Thank you, sis. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on healing. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on healing. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on healing. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Give yourselves a big hand. I am so excited and honored to be here with you. I honor you for your attendance and your presence. You could be a lot of places doing a lot of things, but you pressed your way in to hear about the importance of healing racial trauma. And I am so, so grateful for Reverend Dr. Polk, for his legacy, for his sacrifice, for his work, and the incredible committee and your president that have kept his work alive and continue to move the needle forward. I will tell you from the beginning, as a daughter of two ministers, I'm used to call and response. So you will not just sit there for 40 minutes staring at me. That's not gonna happen. So if I say something you agree with, you can say amen. If you're feeling very feminist, you could say a woman. If you are Afrocentric, you could say ashe. If you're a young person, you could say that's what's up. If something I says hurts you, you could say ouch. But overall, we want to stay present. So let's just practice. Yes, thank you for that. Let me just hear you open your mouth, say something. Yeah. All right, all right, all right. I love it, I love it. Because there is nothing worse than being bored at 7 p.m. So we want to be energized together. We want to be energized together. So our theme on today is talking about healing the wounds of racism, knowing that it is possible. Well, first, it's acknowledging that there are wounds, and then to know that we don't have to stay stuck there, that we can be restored and renewed. And our framework is to think about that from the standpoint of liberation psychology. Now, oftentimes in psychology, let me just see by show of hands, how many psychology majors do I have here? Excellent, very good, very good. Often psychology is criticized for focusing, overemphasizing the individual and ignoring context. So when we're talking about healing, it's not just changing my thoughts and my emotions and my behavior, but for us to recognize when I say justice is therapeutic, that if you live in an environment that is safe and that is fair, it will alleviate a lot of distress. That some stress is caused by injustice, and so we don't want to just tell people to look on the bright side. We don't want to just tell people take a nice deep breath. We want to think about how we can create atmospheres where people can thrive and where they are safe to flourish. Amen? All right, y'all got it, y'all got it. So it is important that I acknowledge my positionality, meaning whenever someone is speaking to you, you want to wonder, who is that person? Because who they are and their journey has shaped the way they show up in the space. So I am a woman of African descent, a descendant of the transatlantic slave trade, and both of my parents and my grandparents and those who came before them worked very actively for the nurturing of people's souls and spirits and for the creation of justice. Along with being a psychologist, as you heard, I'm also a minister and a sacred artist. I love dance, I love poetry, I love music, and I know that the arts often help us to speak about the unspeakable. And so the things that are hard for people to hear, often if we can express them in painting and poetry, it allows people to register and to receive it. Along with being an artist, I am an advocate, an activist, a mother, a sister, a friend, and I resist and reject
colonized views of professionalism that would say you have to be a blank slate and leave yourself at the door. I want to say to you, if you get to the point of graduation and you have left yourself behind, you have been robbed. There is a gift in being who you are. There are multiple ways of knowing. So it is wonderful what you read, it's wonderful what you study, but there's another area of knowing which is based on lived experience. And so as a result of the life you lived, you will know some things that other people did not know, and so you want to show up in the fullness of who you are. As a trauma psychologist, I also recognize I'm a trauma survivor. And as a trauma survivor, I can tell you, people who have been through traumatic experiences become very good at reading people. So when we have to rely on our awareness of people in order to be safe, you pay attention not just to what people say, you pay attention to their facial expressions, you pay attention to their body language. Have you ever walked into a place or entered a space and you don't quite know why, but you knew you needed to be careful? That's wisdom. That's wisdom. And so I say that because it's important not to think about how can I act or how can I talk so that people will be comfortable with me, instead for me to actually be authentic. Because people read the heart, and so when people are discerning of my heart, I want my heart to be in a good place where I authentically care. In addition to recognizing our multiple identities, I want to give a land acknowledgement, recognizing the indigenous peoples who cultivated this space long before you and I were here. And you have often heard of land recognition, but you may not have heard about a labor recognition. Labor recognition is the acknowledgement that the United States of America is a relatively young country. So how did it develop so quickly? It developed quickly, largely based on exploited labor. And I want you to know how gaslighting works. The people who did that exploited labor were then given the stereotype of being lazy. Does that match? For people to have been selected and forced to do generations of labor that allowed us to develop so quickly to then be labeled, stereotyped, and stigmatized. This is the way it works. Before I do harm to a people, I have to dehumanize them. That is what makes it acceptable. So we always want to be careful about the stereotypes, the stigmas that you may hear about people. And this is not just in terms of history, but the present reality. In the present reality, there are people whose labor is not fully compensated. Even when we talk about, if I lived during slavery, what I would have done, and we often have these fantastical ideas of what you would have done if you lived during slavery. Well, I want you to know human trafficking and enslavement exists now. So what you do now is likely what you would have done then. It is not a hypothetical question. So we ask ourselves, when people are being treated, mistreated, when they're being marginalized, when they're being oppressed, what will history say I did? And some of us will wait and say, well, after I graduate, then we'll say, well, now I'm just starting out, I don't have enough money. So then we'll say, like, once I win the lottery or once I'm a millionaire, I'm gonna do incredible things. I want you to know that you can do incredible things right now, that major movements in this country and globally have largely been led by young people. Because young people, if you believe it's possible, just turn and tell the person next to you, it's possible. It's possible, it's possible. And then I want to acknowledge that we are living in a climate where there is a lot of hostility, a lot of division, a lot of oppression, which is a good time, a great time, a perfect time to talk about how we can do things differently. I want you to know, when I get brought into universities, they are often comfortable with me talking to students about how they can cope with racism that they see out there. That if they see it on the television, if they see, people marching or protesting, how to cope with their distress for the oppression over there. But I want to tell you the truth about racism, even though I have never been here before. And so you can know I have no access to your secret information, but just the way racism, sexism, heterosexism, religious intolerance, the way all of these things work, ableism, the way those work is, it's not just out there, it's in here. It's in here. And so we want to think very critically about how I can make things better locally. So I think globally, but also act locally. Now, in scientific work and in scholarship, people will often promote this notion of objectivity. I want to tell you that the notion of objectivity is false. That everyone sees the world through their lens, just some people pretend that they don't. So when they're talking about marginalized groups, they will say their worldview. But when I ask them about their worldview, they think they don't have a worldview. They think they just see the facts. And so it is important for us to recognize that based on our lived experience, we have a perspective. And your perspective is not necessarily truth or the only perspective. So it requires a humility in the ways in which we approach things. Take a deep breath, inhaling in through your nose, exhaling out through your mouth. If you're already stressed, tell your neighbor, we're going to make it through this hour. We're going to make it. I'm a psychologist, so I notice when you get tight, but you're going to be all right. So Lucille Clifton, an incredible poet, ends one of her poems with this line: "Come and celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed." Hey! Come and celebrate with me that every day something has tried to break me, tried to discourage me, tried to eliminate me, underestimated me, and yet, turn and tell somebody, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. And there's a wonderful Mexican proverb that says, they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. Ooh, don't you love that? I believe we have a house full of testimonies that if we could pass the mic, you all have been through some experiences where you were underestimated, where you were disrespected, where you were dishonored, and something in you, and perhaps some people watered you, some people poured on you, that allowed you to continue to show up and allowed you to believe that more was possible for you. And so that's our premise on today, to know that more is possible. We start this conversation about truth-telling with the importance of us being honest ourselves. So as psychologists, we release toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is where people are only comfortable with you celebrating. They're only comfortable with you being in a good mood. When I was growing up, there was a phrase we used to hear that was, fix your face. Fix your face is the message that you're never supposed to look bored, you're never supposed to look disappointed, you're never supposed to be mad, you're supposed to be pleasant, thankful, or neutral. And then we grow into adults when we are suffering and people notice it and they say to us, it looks like you're having a hard time. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. So we have never given the space for our own humanity. So we want to acknowledge, in order to be well, that we are full human beings who have a full human range of experiences and emotions. What does that mean? It means some of you might be excited to be here, and some of you are also upset because you had to be here. Look, I was a student once too. I'm glad you're here. We're going to get through it together. You're all right. Some of us are coming in love, and some of you may be here after a breakup and disappointment. Some of you are coming in burned out and exhausted, and some of you are coming in with enthusiasm, ready to change the world. And we have to give grace and compassion for the different emotions we all hold and the ways in which we carry them, because that is the way we are able to heal. One of the ways that we heal is even with taking breath. Out of all of the systems in the body, the respiratory system is the only system that is not only involuntary, it is voluntary. So when I think, if I'm not thinking about it, my body will still breathe. And then when I'm thinking about it, I can actually shift my breathing. And when I shift my breathing, it helps me to soothe my nervous system. And so we're just going to practice what we would call a box breath. You're going to inhale for 4, hold it 4, exhale 4, and hold it for. You ready? Let me say before we start, I believe in body sovereignty. Body sovereignty means you get to choose. So if you don't want to do it, guess what? Keep breathing the way you want to breathe. That's your body sovereignty. So some people are like, I don't want to do it. That's fine. Be liberated. So inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Inhale through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. And turn and look at somebody and say, you look better. You look better. When we are stressed out, we don't breathe. When we are stressed out, we are in a panic place. And the aim of oppression is to take our breath and to disconnect us from our own physicalities, our own bodies. And so we take breath. We also heal with our compassion holds. If it aligns with you, remember body sovereignty. You can just stare at me if you want to. You can place one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, inhaling in through the nose, exhaling out through the mouth. Inhaling in through the nose, exhaling out through the mouth. And then embrace yourself, hug yourself. Some people haven't been hugged today. Now you have. Inhaling in through the nose, exhaling out through your mouth. So psychologists have gotten these large grants to do major studies on what is healing in the nervous system. And aside from breathing, one of the things they found, two of the things they found are humming and swaying. Can you believe that? They got $1 million grants to find out that humming and swaying are, they could have like interviewed some church mothers, right? So hum and sway, and you can calm your nervous system. We also recognize the healing power of music. So I'm going to ask you to join with me and turn and tell your neighbor, I can't wait to hear you sing. So the reality about racism is that we often don't talk about it. And when things are silenced, they cannot be addressed. So we want to be able to speak about it. So in this chant, the first time we sing the line, the notes go up. The second time, the notes go down. If that means nothing to you, just let the notes fall out of your mouth any way they want to fall. It goes like this. Silence no more, I was born to roar. Silence no more, I was born to roar. Let me hear you. Silence no more, I was born to roar. Silence no more, I was born to roar. And now with sign, get your hands ready. Silence no more, I was born to roar. Silence no more, I was born to roar. And you give yourself an applause and sign. Woo! Very good. Turn and tell somebody, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it. I will not be silenced. And so we express the realities of racism and other forms of oppression. You can speak about it in your class research papers. You can talk about it with friends and with family. I find it's often easier for people to talk with strangers than to talk to their own families about issues of oppression. You can talk about it in your art. Art plus awareness raising is called artivism. So using your art to speak about injustice is another way. You can protest, you can petition, you can write policies, but we need to talk about it. We want to move beyond racial awareness to actually making a difference. So it is very comfortable for people to say, oh, I'm culturally aware, or I'm culturally competent. Cultural competence is usually defined as awareness, knowledge, and skills. And I want you to know the aim for you is not just tolerance. Tolerance was a whole movement. They have a website. I want you to know I'm a language person as a poet, and we tolerate things we can't get rid of, right? If I can't get rid of it, then I'm going to tolerate it. What people are looking for is not tolerance, but respect. Have you ever felt and recognized when you were just being tolerated? It's a very different feeling than actually being appreciated and being respected and being honored. So we want to actively think about, I will say, tolerance is better than intolerance, but that's not the end of the road. That's not the end of the work. We want to really work until we are actively engaged in promoting racial justice and liberation. Now, I want to help you around our understanding of racism. Racism is not just bias. People are comfortable with the bias word because we'll say everyone has their biases, they don't mean any harm. And while bias, racial bias is a thing, we don't want to equate that alone with racism because bias is a matter of an individual. So if an individual doesn't like you, you just avoid them. Right? Is that what you were told in kindergarten? If they don't want to play with you, you go find you some other friends, right? Now, if I knew somebody down the street from me had a bias against black people, I just wouldn't go to their house. It's solved, it's easy. The issue with racism and other forms of oppression is that they are systemic, they are structural, they are institutionalized, they are unavoidable. That I can be minding my own business and racism can show up on a banking application, it can show up in a job application, it can show up in a social environment, it can show up in a religious setting, and so it is institutionalized and unavoidable. So that helps us to take the responsibility off of individuals that they just need to avoid better or ignore it, because in every area of your life, in every discipline, it shows up. And I want to say to you, for those who I know based on how we are raised may be wondering, is this just her opinion, right? Because you could sit there and say, I don't agree. Well, I'm not offering an opinion. I'm offering facts. I'm offering science. Amen. So it's not just I decided I wanted to make up that there is racism. So there have been studies done by psychologists where it is documented, blinded studies, where people don't know what is being studied. They will give the same application for a loan, and the only thing they change is the race of the person applying, and the people of color do not get the loan. They have done these studies around employment, where if you have an ethnic sounding name, you are less likely to even be given an interview. So it is documented and demonstrated, and we want to be intentional about solving it and about addressing it. We also want to know that it is foundational if I want to be ethical in my profession. So my work is a psychologist, but whatever your major is, if I want to be ethical in political science, in history and economics, in sociology, it is imperative that I see people completely. And some people think they're giving me a compliment where they say things like, I didn't notice you were black until you said it. Say that. Like, do you see me? And I know what they mean when they say that. What they mean is, I didn't think anything bad about it. But not thinking something negative is not the same thing as not being able to see your identity. And so we have recognized and documented that the colorblind approach doesn't work. We want to be able to see the humanity in people with all of the diversity with which they show up in. So all of our various ethnic identities, our gender, our sexuality, our religion, it's not either or. So when people say things like, I don't see those things, I'm just a human being. Having a race or gender does not eliminate your humanity. So I'm not asking, are you a human or do you have a gender or a race, right? So we have humanity, and then we have our various multiple identities, and then we have the ways that you are a unique being, where sometimes I'll just do something and people are like, is that a black thing? No, that's a Thema thing. That's just me. That's just me being myself. So we want to be able to embrace all of the layers of our identity and know that's an ethical way to respond. We then want to recognize that there is not only race, but racism and racial trauma and oppression, and think about which traumas you're willing to acknowledge and which ones you're not. So Audre Lorde, incredible poet, had this line in one of her poems, "This woman is black, so her blood is shed in silence." All of us are more compassionate towards certain trauma survivors than others. So initially, when the term PTSD was developed, post-traumatic stress disorder, it was thinking about veterans. And any of us who have known veterans, my grandfather was a veteran, my uncle was a veteran, we know a lot of what they have sacrificed and what they have been through, and it is so important for resources to be given to help people to recover, right? So the idea is they go to war, they come back, and how do we help them recover? Well, then people started to petition and advocate for the recognition of additional traumas like child abuse, molestation, sexual assault, intimate partner violence, and at first there was pushback of people saying they haven't been to war, that's not a trauma. And we had to make the case that some people's war is in their childhood bedroom. Some people's war was in the school they grew up in. Some people, it was war in the community that they were forced to grow up in. And so then they expanded the idea, and we recognize there are these multiple forms of trauma. Well, there has been another movement afoot within the field for recognizing the trauma of oppression, to recognize that racism, sexism, classism, ableism can be traumatizing. And then there are some people in the field, catch this, who will say things like, well, racism would be a lowercase t trauma because it's just emotional. So let me get this. The violation of one person is a capital T trauma. The violation of generations of people is a lowercase t trauma, and if you think it doesn't threaten life, you haven't been paying attention. So we want to check ourselves to notice, when am I able to have compassion and respond with compassion when people have been mistreated? And when do I immediately go to victim blaming to say they must just be lazy, or they must have bad morals, or they just want a handout, instead of recognizing the realities of systemic oppression? So we want to acknowledge traumatizing events, and I want to say there are some events that as a singular event are traumatic, and then there's also some which are a cumulative effect. Somebody say cumulative. So that means if I just looked at one incident, in my mind I might say that seems like not a big deal. So you have to think about if events are repeated over time, that you're experiencing this over and over again, what will be the impact on your psyche, on your awareness of yourself, on your ability to be able to provide and to produce and to flourish in a safe environment? I also want to name for you all the importance of recognizing intergenerational trauma. Intergenerational trauma means some of the stress you're carrying didn't start with you. The people who raised you were under trauma and distress, and that can be passed down. Now, those could be related to racism or not. You may be a child of someone who was molested, and they're a child of someone who experienced domestic violence, and that effect shows up in you in multiple ways. And then there are also these collective traumas where someone could be a descendant of the Trail of Tears, a descendant of the Holocaust, a descendant of the transatlantic slave trade. And so the ways in which that shows up in the ways that you were parented, the ways that you were taught, the distress that's in your body. And this is not only in your thoughts, but when we study this neurologically, it shows up in the brain. So trauma shifts us, and the good news is healing can shift us as well. Wellness can shift us so that we can pass on a new legacy. For those of you who have experienced racism or other forms of oppression, I want you to know there are various ways you might respond when you experience it. So we have fight, flight, freeze, or tend and befriend are four of the major ones. Fight, they are those of us who, when racism shows up, we respond quickly, we have a voice, we fight back, we will defend the issue. I have a brother who is like that. I have friends who are like that. They make excellent attorneys. I'm a therapist. I'm one of those where, like, hours later, I'm like, now what I should have said. Right? So There are those who are immediately in fight mode. Now, the gift of being in fight mode is you don't let racism go unchecked. A challenge of living in fight mode is sometimes you fight people who could have been your allies. So we want to be thoughtful about our use of it. Some of us operate out of freeze mode. When racism shows up, we leave. Leave the job, leave the people, leave the environment, leave the university, and that's understandable. The gift of fleeing is I'm not going to overstay places where I'm not welcome. The challenge is sometimes you might leave a place that you could have helped to improve if we had stayed and had the right allies. Another one is freeze. And though there are those of us who, even though you know racism is a reality, you still don't always see it coming. Like people just say something out of the way and you're stunned. I was working with a client who's black. She was adopted and raised by a white family. And she talked to me. They had her in a predominantly white neighborhood, predominantly white school. And she talked to me as a middle schooler about the number of white friends who had asked her if they would give her a pass so they could use the N-word, and told her that their other black friends had given them this pass and that she should give them this pass. So you think about, and again I'm saying, for an adult that would be like, what in the world? I want you to think about for a child who is also not seeing their reflection, how that shows up. So often when this would happen, she would freeze and then feel shame about not having rallied or not knowing how to respond, even though she was never taught how to respond. And so we want to give ourselves grace for the times we have frozen, and the gift, you can call it a gift, or the terrible thing about racism is you'll always get another chance. So I do say to people, if it happens within a community, you can always circle back. So I've worked at places, and if someone says something racist, let's say in the moment I wasn't clear what I wanted to say, or I felt overwhelmed and felt like if I start talking, I'm going to get a little animated, and I don't want to do that. So next week at the meeting, I can still show up and say, I want to circle back to something that was said here last week. I want you to think about the opportunities that you have missed to speak up for justice, to speak up for what's right, to speak up for what's fair, and to consider, are any of those things you can circle back to? Maybe it's something a family member said, a friend said, someone you were dating said, and you let it just hang in the air because you were stunned and unprepared. You can circle back. Turn and tell somebody you can. And we also want to be careful that some of us operate with tend and befriend. So with tend and befriend, you figure out who has power in the environment, and then you try to associate with them. So those are children who, for example, grow up in domestic violence, and they align with the parent who's abusive because they recognize they have the power. When it comes to racism, there are some people of color who will align with the power structure and want to be the only one, right? I am the chosen black one, and I'm going to talk bad about all the other black people so that I can get special status. So we want to be very careful about those people, because when I am building myself up based on stepping on somebody else, I'm on very shaky ground. Somebody say shaky ground. And so we consider that racial trauma can affect us and wound us, and the wounds can show up psychologically. Thank you so much. We may experience depression, anxiety, anger. I want to say it is healthy to be outraged about outrageous things. Amen, thank you. It is healthy because some people are like, oh, they have such a bad attitude. Well, if you and your community have been badly mistreated, it's a healthy response to have outrage about it. There was a season when there were a lot of protests going on, and I saw this great quote on social media, and the person said, "They are so focused on our rage, they did not see our grief." So people were so upset that you're upset that they never bothered to ask, what are you upset about? What is it that you are grieving? And so we want to honor the humanity in the ways in which we show our distress. Some of us were never given permission for psychological distress so it shows up in the body. Somebody say soma. Soma is the body, so we have somatic complaints. So some of us are like, I don't get depressed, but you always get migraines. You're like, I'm not anxious, I'm not worried about it, but you have backache and body ache. Some of you are like, I'm not even thinking about it, but you have nausea and have lost your appetite. So our bodies tell the stories of our distress. It can show up with difficulty concentrating, focusing, and remembering. That's especially hard if you're a student. It can show up as barriers to your goals and to your aims. It can affect us physically when we look at health disparities. Any future doctors in here? See your hands? Thank you. So a lot of people carry stress in their bodies, and we want to be attentive to that. And then it can also affect your spirituality, where people are, it can increase your faith, or it can decrease your faith, or it can change your faith, because we see the realities of oppression. In African psychology, we recognize the importance of being, not just doing. In racism, since African Americans being on this soil, often our worth was equated with our labor, our busyness. And so then you have people who are hyper-extending themselves. And so a part of our wellness is that I get to be still. And that can be a radical and revolutionary act to pour into myself and to embrace stillness. Liberation psychology was born in Latin America. It means that I'm actively trying to dismantle oppression, that I'm thinking holistically, including mind, body, and spirit, and that I'm having a strengths-based approach, recognizing that we are not just marginalized and not just victims, but we also have strengths that we bring to the table. Liberation psychology encourages empowerment, healing, and thriving, and it promotes the idea that we get to define ourselves for ourselves, not just be defined by other people's stereotypes. There are various approaches to liberation psychology. We can think about the social aspect, the community aspect. We can think about culturally specific interventions. And then there's an important word, someone say intersectionality. So it is not just multiple identities, but multiple marginalized identities. So what does it mean when I'm facing racism and I'm also a woman? What does it mean if I'm facing ableism and I'm also low income? So the multiple marginalized identities then have a unique effect, but then there are also important pathways by which we heal. So we say we not only have cultural oppression, but we have cultural resources and cultural strengths. So how do we understand and approach this healing work? It's not to say to people, what's wrong with you? When people are having a hard time, we can ask ourselves and ask them the question, what happened to you? What happened to you shifts it from victim blaming to understanding there is a story and multiple stories. What happened to you and to your community, and what are the ways in which you can heal and grow and thrive? So there's a number of models that have been created to heal racial trauma from a psychological perspective. One of those models was created by myself and Dr. Ocampo. We talk about the importance of acknowledging racism, being able to share our stories, building places of trust and being trustworthy, addressing internalized racism. Internalized racism is when I have come to believe the lies I've been told about my own people. There's also internalized sexism. Internalized sexism sounds like this. I don't like to be friends with women, other women, because women are petty. I say, really? So all the men are deep? You just met a whole bunch of deep men, deep, profound men, and these petty, superficial women, right? So if you're the only one in your category that you like, that's internalized oppression. Right? You hate your whole community, but you're the special one because you're with the other people. So we want to address the ways we have believed the lies about ourselves. We want to be able to grieve the losses. What has oppression, racism, and other forms of oppression, what has that taken from you? And then we want to have safe places where we can express our anger, but we want constructive anger instead of destructive anger. Constructive anger mobilizes me to be an agent of change, to do things differently, to not leave things the way they are. And then along with my anger, I want healthy coping strategies. And now here is the key difference. Liberation psychology has resistant strategies. So we don't just tell people to journal. Journaling is wonderful. I love green tea. I love aromatherapy. I love a good massage. I love all those things. But the point is, it is not just for us to soothe ourselves. It's for us to think about, how can I push back on racism? How can I resist it? And there are multiple ways to resist. You can resist by starting a community organization. You can resist by voting or running for office. You can resist with your research. You can resist by your presence. Now here's the thing. If you're a marginalized person, your resistance might also be resting. Your resistance can also be joy. I don't know if you all are on social media. I assume you are. But if you are, you have seen a lot of black people doing a dance called Boots on the Ground, where they are waving fans and dancing. And the more stressful things get, the more dancing you see. And that's a form of resistance of, I'm not going to let these people stress me out. And so we think about the ways in which we resist. Let me say to you, racism, like all forms of oppression, is interdisciplinary. So the solution has to be interdisciplinary. So there is more than one way to push back, and we want to be careful about judging the way somebody else is pushing back, because we need all of the ways, yes? And so I want to close with a song based on a Native American poem, and it is Call and Response. So I'm going to sing a line, and I'm going to ask you to repeat it after me. If you don't repeat it, it's not call and response, and we have failed, okay? All right, so are you ready? Yes. Okay. And if anybody has, once I start the beat, if you can do it with your foot, you would help us have the little drum beat. In wisdom may we walk all day long, may we walk. In wisdom. In peace may we walk all day long, may we walk. In love may we walk all day long, may we walk. And for every blessing we forgot, we say, do, 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 do. Repeat after me. We are the change we've been waiting for. We are the change we've been waiting for. We are the change we've been waiting for. Give yourselves a big hand. I believe our student is coming. Yes?
Round of applause. That was wonderful, and now we have a few questions for you.
All right, great.
When building a community, what advice would you give someone when they feel pressured to fit an image and are not empowered to show their authentic self?
Excellent. Authenticity is healing. When you have to perform, and some people aren't meant to be leaders. So if you're not a people person, like, go do something independently. So love people, and then you have to meet people where they are, and then you move forward from there. There's an African proverb that says, I'm going to say she, the proverb in its original form says he, but it says, she who thinks she's leading with no one following her is merely taking a walk. Right? So you could have the best vision and you're the best activist, but like if no one is coming, then you're missing it. So we want to be mobilizing and inspiring and connect with people. And then, yes, we need a vision about like where are we going so that we can address the issue collectively.
That was beautiful, thank you. And then for our last question, in your book, Matters of the Heart, you said we need to pour into ourselves. In this fast-paced society where people are praised and encouraged to go, 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 how does someone settle down and heal themselves?
Excellent. So I would say to you to remember that you're worthy. Many of us are spending years of our lives trying to prove ourselves. And when it comes from trauma and from oppression, you can feel like you've never done enough. And I had this incredible moment. I was going to speak somewhere, and I have this like super long resume, and a very insightful person who's gonna have to introduce me was looking at this resume, and she said, "When do you sleep?" I said, "That's a good question." And so we have to get to a place where we can not just pause when we break down. That's what a lot of us do. We run ourselves in a hole, and then we rest, and then we repeat the pattern again and again. So it's really to come to a place of recognizing I am already enough. I'm already enough. And then getting in community with people who care about you and believe that for you as well, because then they will encourage you to slow down. And I would say sometimes we are running not just to prove ourselves, but sometimes we're running from our past or running from the pain. And let me tell you, those things show up, even sometimes in ways we don't recognize. They show up in the way we treat ourselves, the way we abandon ourselves. It shows up in how we treat other people. And so for a sustainable quality of life, I want to incorporate both self-care and community care. So ways I nourish myself, and then being intentional about building a circle of people where we pour into each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Thema. Now, I'd like to welcome Doane University's 13th president, Dr. Roger Hughes, to the stage.
Good evening. It's an honor to stand before you tonight as we celebrate a truly momentous occasion for our university, the 10th anniversary of the Polk Lectureship. This event brings us together to engage in conversations about race and inclusion and also honor Reverend Dr. Robert L. Polk, a leader whose life and work continue to profoundly shape our institution and inspire generations of students, faculty, and staff. Dr. Polk's story is one of strength and the pursuit of justice. From becoming Doane's first African-American graduate in 1952, after initially being denied admission, to leading a life dedicated to ministry and transforming lives, and to establishing this lectureship on race and social justice. His journey is a powerful reminder of what is possible when we champion positive change and remain committed to social justice. I want to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Bryant for your remarks this evening and helping us celebrate the 10th anniversary of this lecture. Your special message will be remembered for years to come. And to each of you in attendance today, thank you for being part of this meaningful conversation, a conversation that I hope challenges us to consider our respective role in building relationships across race and fostering places of belonging. Your presence underscores the importance of your presence underscores the importance of Dr. Polk's legacy and our collective commitment to the value he embodies. For 10 years now, this lectureship has grown strong because of the dedication of the committee members who spend many hours bringing to life an educational experience that sparks critical thinking and inspires all of us to be catalysts for good and justice in this world. Thank you for investing in our university's community and growth. And now it is my great honor to welcome the 97-year young Reverend Dr. Robert Polk to share his reflection with us this evening.
Good evening, everyone present for this 10th lecture that carries my name at my favorite college and alma mater, Doane College. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. And I must say that though I knew a little bit about liberation theology, Dr. Bryant, I was not quite sure what it meant to be liberation psychology. All that you've said this evening has prompted me to want to return to the classroom and be a critical thinker and to understand racism and ourselves and society based upon liberation psychology. I learned an awful lot. May not have remembered an awful lot, but I've learned an awful lot. As we say in our community, Dr. Bryant, you put the big pot in the little pot this evening. Thank you very much for those wonderful comments and the way in which you systematically carried out the theme of racism in society and how it affects individuals and communities in our lives. And in this day and time when we're facing critical social and national issues, your words were very, very important, and I hope everyone in the audience will take them back. The second thing I would say is that I can't wait to read your books to reinforce some of the things that you said tonight, which makes it all very interesting. I thank Dr. Hughes for his kind words. I feel like I've been around Doane College so long, I don't need to be honored again. And probably I won't be around much longer to be honored again. But thank you, Roger, for your kind words as you have expressed them the years that you have been president at each of these lectures on race and social justice. When I sat down this morning to try to put a few notes together in terms of what I would say this evening, the phone rang, and who should it be but Dr. Roger Hughes, wondered if I prompted me to be on time and all those good things. But more importantly, we had a chance to talk about Doane College and how it's doing, its future, its fundraising, its new building projects, the new arts center, and all those things that are so important to enhance and develop that school that we all love so well. And so I thought I'd put down a few little things that would chronicle my years at Doane. And I came to recognize all of you in the audience and Dr. Hughes that I'm probably the oldest living alum at Doane College. My time goes back 80 years when I first set foot on the campus of Doane College. I'm going to carry you through just a few of these years that I've spent so enthralled and so satisfied about my years at Doane. Forget about my being rejected, when I first applied, Miss Weaver and I, but the things that followed. You have to go through the struggle to come out with issues that are very positive, and you can change the bad news to the good news, as John Lewis would say, good trouble. So I went to Doane College to a conference the year that the day after I graduated from high school. Black kid on the south side of Chicago, whose minister and his wife wanted me to go to this conference for congregational young people at a place called Doane College, which I'd never heard of, and a place called Crete, Nebraska, which I'd never heard of. And so after partying most of the night with my classmates and friends and girlfriends and all. I hit the train the next morning heading for Crete, Nebraska, Lincoln really, and I was met and taken to Crete. That was in June of 1946, before your mamas and your papas and your grandmamas and your granddaddies were even born or even thought of. And that sort of started me thinking about my years at Doane and my appreciation. And so I call this little chronicling of my appreciation for Doane, I call it For the Love of Doane. It's like it's what has kept me connected to that school so long and connected with so many of the friends that I have gotten to know and I have appreciated and loved over the years. And then I went to apply for to enter college. I thought, gee, this is a place for me to go. Small, the cost was about right. If I stayed out and worked a year between high school and college, I could afford the $750 per semester to go to Doane College. And so I did. And so I got in finally after the second try. And my roommate was Don Goodrich, as his daughter pointed out earlier. And Don and I hit it off well. He was a senior, I was a sophomore, because I had been to junior college for a couple of years. And so Don was the one who slept in got up late in the morning, and I was an early riser to get up and study in the morning. I'm a morning person. We met, we had a great time together at my first year and his senior year. And for 70 years, I've been a friend to Don Goodrich and his family. Went to their home many times, met his siblings, his mother and father, for 4 generations. Parents, Don's generation, Don's marriage and daughter, Susan Goodrich, whom you saw on the video earlier, and now their children. One of the joys of my life, Dr. Bryant, has been learning to meet friends and sustain deep friendships, which help to mitigate some of the issues you talked about tonight. You can do it with church folks or whomever, but most of my friends I've known 60, 70, 50 years, and that has nourished me considerably. And then I went on to graduate in 52 from Doane. I delivered the first baccalaureate. I delivered one last year in about 1974. These dates are not totally accurate, so don't fact check them, Tom Reeves. Then I delivered the baccalaureate, and then the next couple of years, I was honored to be presented with my first honorary doctor's degree, and that was a thrill of a lifetime. And you have no idea how many doors that opened for me in New York City, Connecticut, or wherever I went. But then after that, I was able to make a couple of recommendations for honorary degrees. One was the Reverend Dr. Joan Campbell, who was the head of the National Council of Churches and just died about 3-4 weeks ago. She received her first honorary degree from Doane College upon my recommendation. The second one was to Francis Fukuyama. Francis was Japanese son of Yoshio Fukuyama, who was a student at Doane College. Doane College took 6 or 7 Japanese American students in when that was a no-no in most colleges and universities around the country, and when those families were moved from the West Coast into the heartland of America and were treated like, animals like we're doing today with some of our people. But Yoshio was a great student. He became a clergyman, and his son Francis is said to be one of the great thinkers in America. And then I went on I returned to Doane in 1983 for the centennial for the Delta Kappa Phi fraternity, my fraternity. 2015, I was present for Don Goodrich's memorial service after he died, my first roommate, on my way to Hastings, Nebraska, stopped at Doane, stayed with Lily and Bunny, and Dick Dudley, like most people did when they got to Crete. And dear sister Marilyn Johnson Farr and the president at that time of the college and a few other folks cornered me and asked me what I thought my legacy should be to Doane College. Well, I'd never thought about a legacy for myself at Doane College. To make a long story short, it developed into what we have this evening, the lectureship named after me for race and social justice. And then 2016 was the first lecture of 15 or 16. I went to the second lecture. David Dennis gave the second lecture. He had one of my students at Dillard University, one of the great leaders in the civil rights movement. Then last year, I was deeply honored and moved by the naming of the outdoor amphitheater for Robert L. Polk, yours truly, and was able to deliver both the baccalaureate and the commencement addresses at commencement last year. You know, and that's the sumness of my experience to this institution for 80 years. And another thought came to me before I stopped, was that when I graduated seminary, I took my first parish in a little country town called Berthold, North Dakota. Here I am now, a black guy from Chicago, going to this white state. I was told I was the 48th black in the whole state, and worked there for 2 years. And people could not quite understand how I got along with these white people so well. I didn't see a black person for a couple of years. And when I was taking notes today, it dawned on me, I knew something that they didn't know, that I had been to Doane College and worked with white students who had never seen a black person before. So I was 1 foot ahead of them. The experience there was very rich and rewarding, and sometimes it was difficult, but it was certainly 80 years that made me the person that I am today. I'm grateful to President Hughes and the faculty and the staff and the students for their gracious hospitality last year at commencement time, both at baccalaureate and hospitality. I would be remiss if I didn't thank the Brotherhood, if you don't mind my saying so, for their hospitality last year when we had lunch. They hosted me for a luncheon, and told me some of their stories about being in the fraternity these days at Doane College. Certainly different from my experience 70 years ago. But I was touched by the fact that just before commencement, before baccalaureate, 3 of the brothers came up to me and put a new DKP pin on my robe, since I had lost mine in the course of moving around so many years. And that's the way that life is, not just Greek life, but life when you get to know your fellow students and learn all the things that Dr. Bryant has prepared us to learn and to do, and how to keep ourselves sane, body, mind, and spirit. Dr. Bryant, you nurtured us holistically this evening. No one can walk out of that auditorium without a takeaway that will make their lives better. So I'm grateful to you for that opportunity, your being here to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the lectureship on race and social justice. With all of that, as they say in Congress, Mr. President, I yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you to Dr. Robert L. Polk, our 2025 lecturer, Dr. Thema Bryant, President Hughes, and Dr. Cooper for participating. Thanks to our audience who are both in person and streaming online. Please feel free to mingle afterward in our great hall. We wish everyone a lovely evening, and thanks again for attending. Have a good evening.